short video. And I'm going to put my speaker on mute and we're going to watch some movie.
Hi, my name is Rainn Wilson, and here's an animated introduction to the Baha'i Faith that I put together with the help of some friends. So I'm going to be trying to give you a general overview of the Baha'i Faith, and it does bear noting that there are no clergy in the Baha'i Faith, so I'm just a regular Baha'i, just like all of the other regular Baha'is on the planet, and I have my own perspective, my own way of seeing the world and interpreting the Baha'i holy writings. There are no rabbis or priests or gurus or mullahs in the Baha'i Faith, no intermediaries between the common worshiper or devotee and the holy writings or God. That is to say that this little exploration in no way should be viewed as definitive or official in any way, just one guy's perspective on what is faith.
Sorry, it looks like we lost the video. I'll try one more time.
Could people see the video or was it okay?
I heard that it was not showing.
Do you need to do share screen or something?
It is shared.
Okay.
The screen is on.
The introduction to the Baha'i Faith that I put together with the help of some friends. So I'm going to be trying to give you a general overview of the Baha'i Faith, and it does bear noting that there are no clergy in the Baha'i Faith, so I'm just a regular Baha'i, just like all of the other regular Baha'is on the planet, and I have my own perspective, my own way of seeing the world and interpreting the Baha'i holy writings. There are no rabbis or priests or gurus or mullahs in the Baha'i Faith, no intermediaries between the common worshiper or devotee and the holy writings or God. That is to say that this little exploration in no way should be viewed as definitive or official in any way, just one guy's perspective on what his faith is about. I want to start off by talking about the word cosmology. Literally, the word means the study of the cosmos. Logia plus universe or cosmos, something like that. But I'm using the word as it relates to an overarching worldview, taking a look at a belief system from a 20,000-foot perspective. So before we get to the cosmology of the Baha'i Faith, let's take a quick look at some of the other ones. What is the cosmology of atheism, for instance? Probably some words and thoughts come immediately to mind, like science and evolution, the Big Bang. So the atheist universal belief system, or cosmology, in broad strokes, is that there was a big empty space and then there was some kind of explosion from a tiny speck, and within seconds atoms erupted and formed into molecules and elements, and all of this energy and matter burst forth from this primal point, eventually becoming galaxies and solar systems and planets like ours. Energy, matter, plus apparently dark matter and dark energy, and time itself were all created in one random explosion over 13 billion years ago. So our watery mud ball Earth was spinning around our sun for a few billion years, and then something happened. I don't know, maybe a lightning bolt hit an ocean or a meteorite fell in and created the first tiny specks of molecular life. The specks eventually became guppies, which eventually became tadpoles, and eventually crawled on land and became pterodactyls and marmosets and bunnies and apes and then human beings. Voila, evolution. Science is then the driving force behind the universe, which has no underlying or objective meaning, according to an atheist or materialist. The consciousness that we are experiencing right now is simply a result of our highly evolved and very large brains. There's not any real difference between us and monkeys. We just have larger brains that have evolved into being able to know that we will someday die. Brains that can create beautiful works of art, fall in love. Our highly evolved consciousness is simply a matter of more evolved gray matter. The only meaning we find in life is purely subjective and personal. If our work gives us meaning, or our family, or children, or hobbies, or nature, great. Go for that thing. There's not supernatural creator God, as his existence can't be scientifically verified, and therefore there's no objective moral truth. Now, let's think about what a Christian cosmology might look like. Forgive me for being reductive or simplistic with either of these belief systems, but in a nutshell, there were a number of Jewish prophets every few hundred years in and around Judea and Palestine, and then all of a sudden, God sent his only begotten Son. Jesus Christ was born of the virgin birth, was baptized, saw the Holy Spirit manifested in a dove, and preached the gospel, performed many miracles, and eventually was put to death. The only way to the Father is through him, and he died for our sins on the cross, and then was resurrected 3 days later and went back up to be with his Father. Someday he will return and take true believers with him and or rebuild the kingdom of God on earth. The Christian universe view holds that salvation of one's immortal soul comes from believing in Christ, being baptized, and that good Christians eventually go to heaven and that most others go to hell. Now, there's a lot more to Christianity than that, just as there's more to atheism than what I previously described, but it gives you a wide-angle lens view of what they believe. Now, let's take a look at the Baha'i Cosmology. I'll start with one word, one name, Baha'u'llah. Baha'is follow the teachings of Baha'u'llah, who was the founder of the Baha'i Faith. He lived not long ago, actually, in the mid-1800s, and was a Persian nobleman who turned away from his high-status position and instead became a great spiritual teacher. The name Baha'u'llah means the glory of God. In Arabic, Baha is glory and Allah is God, of course. It's those two words kind of mashed up together. And this is what Baha'u'llah taught. Baha'is believe there is only one God. Call him or her or it whatever you like, Allah, Jehovah, Gaia, the Great Spirit, but all people who worship are praying to the same God, an all-loving, all-knowing creative force in us and around us, as well as in an infinite amount of other universes beyond this material one. So, point number one, there is only one God. This is the first key aspect of the Baha'i cosmology. One God, remember that. The next aspect is that there is only one religion. That's right. Baha'u'llah taught that there is, in actuality, only one religion. Now you might say, hey, that sounds crazy. There's dozens of religions and they all believe in hundreds of very different things. How can that be? Well, Baha'u'llah taught that there is only one faith ever unfolding as revealed by that one God that I previously mentioned. This one faith is gradually revealed and updated by certain divine teachers who come along every 500 or 1,000 years or so. You've heard of many of them before. Holy men or prophets or messengers that go by the names of Abraham, Zoroaster, Krishna, Moses, the Buddha, Jesus and Muhammad, the forerunner of the Baha'i Faith, the Bab, and now Baha'u'llah. Think of it this way. You have a computer that gets various updates to its operating system, right? You've got Cougar and then Leopard and then Mountain Tiger and Mountain Leopard 3.5, etc. They all build on one another. When you get a new operating system, it's an update to what was there previously. Same with iPhones. You had the 3 and then the 3S and the 5 Plus and now the 7 or 8 or whatever phone is next. Well, it's the same thing with religion. Just as humanity needs to progress materially, socially, and technologically, we as a species need to progress spiritually as well. God takes care of this by sending his specially appointed messengers and teachers to update his message or his operating system. Baha'is call this idea of a gradually unfolding faith of God progressive revelation. Baha'u'llah calls this one faith that is progressively revealed the changeless faith of God, eternal in the past, eternal in the future. And eventually, a long time from now, this creator will send more holy teachers for humanity's spiritual guidance. Now, it would be easy to look at the differences in the various religious faiths that these men founded. There are certainly a great deal of differences between, say, Islam and Buddhism. But if you really look at what the prophets themselves taught, what they specifically said or what they were supposed to have said, remember, people usually didn't write down what they were saying for hundreds of years after they died, there are way more similarities than differences. What are some of these universal truths taught by these divine manifestations of God? Well, how about the idea that we should all love one another? That's pretty universal through all religions. All you need is love. The golden rule exists in some form in literally every major world religion. What about the idea that there is a reality greater than our merely physical life, that there is some kind of afterlife, that our reality is not that we are just bodies in three-dimensional space, but that we have a soul or spirit that continues on its journey after the lease on our meat suits runs out, that this material world is kind of an illusion and that there is a deeper reality above, beyond, and behind this physical veil? This goes hand in hand with the concept that we have dual natures. Although the physical world has its importance, the pursuits of selfish animal, sensual, or ego-focused desires and fulfillments of our baser needs is pointless and will not ultimately make us happy. But if we pursue spiritual service to others and goodly deeds and compassionate acts, they will lead to true fulfillment and spiritual bliss. Prayer and meditation. Those are two universal actions for enlightenment that run through all the world's major religions. The concept that there is a divinely ordained idea of right and wrong, a morality, as it were, good deeds and bad deeds, and that there are reverberations and repercussions for both. The list of commonalities goes on and on. So what did Baha'u'llah, the most recent prophet of God, teach? Well, I'd like to go to a metaphor about these prophets that is really interesting. Baha'u'llah calls these holy teachers divine physicians. He says this, and it's kind of a long quote, so get ready. You ready? Okay, here we go. The all-knowing physician hath his finger on the pulse of humankind. He perceiveth the disease and prescribeth in his unerring wisdom the remedy. Every age has its own problem, and every soul its particular aspiration. The remedy the world needeth in its present-day afflictions can never be the same as that which a subsequent age may require. Be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age ye live in, and center your deliberations on its exigencies and requirements. So as I see it, in a nutshell, he's saying that these divine physicians come down to earth at a specific time and place and do two things. They diagnose the illness for the time and place, and they prescribe a cure, a spiritual cure for what the world needs at that time, just like a doctor. But, and it's the last sentence of the quote that I love most, be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age you live in. The last sentence is a command, be anxiously concerned, and basically focus your conversations and actions on today's urgent needs and look for solutions. So, and here's my question for you. If you were a divine physician sent down to diagnose the world's spiritual problems in this modern age of humanity, what would you come up with? And what would you prescribe for that illness? I'll give you a second. Okay, time's up. I'm guessing you might have thought about all the disunity on the planet today, right? Differences of race, class, economics, gender issues, politics. Well, this brings us to the main spiritual teaching of Baha'u'llah. The earth is but one country, and mankind its citizens. In other words, the third major key point of the Baha'i Cosmology, one humanity. The differences that divided us for eons must be healed, as we are, in this day and age, one human family, and need to act like it. Today, about 1 billion people go to bed hungry each night. If your brother or sister or family member went to bed hungry, would you allow it? Racism is probably something that popped up in your brain as you were ruminating before. The elimination of racial prejudice is one of the most central tenets of the Baha'i Faith, and a must for healing humanity and uniting us all. And that goes hand in hand with another big issue that probably came up for you in your personal diagnosis. Economic injustice, the disparity between rich and poor. Right now, 26 men own as much wealth as half the planet. That's 3.7 billion people. Now, there's nothing wrong with those 26 men starting awesome businesses, but this statistic is just plain wrong. It's unjust and unsustainable. It's also unjust and unsustainable that women are treated like second-class citizens, subjugated in the developing world as well as in the West. Baha'u'llah was perhaps the first spiritual teacher to advocate for gender equality and justice. And this was back in the 1860s in the Middle East, a truly revolutionary act. Baha'u'llah also addressed the need for science and religion to be in harmony. He said they were like the two wings of a bird, and we need both wings to fly. Baha'u'llah once wrote, "Religion without science is superstition. Science without religion is materialism. So Baha'u'llah, Baha'is believe, is the divine physician for this day and age, the prophet for the modern world, and is seeking to unify humanity. He said, "Let your vision be world-embracing." And he also said, all men have been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. Millions of Baha'is around the world are doing our best to put his teachings into action each day, bring love and harmony to an ailing planet, fight for social justice from a spiritual perspective, and live lives of service. I guess the thing I'll leave you with is an action item. To read some of Baha'u'llah's writings, investigate his faith, maybe check out Baha'i.org or BahaiTeachings.org, and make a decision. He is one of two things. Either he is a very, very wise man who brought beautiful, important, mystical teachings of peace, or he is who he says he is, and is a divine physician sent by God, giving humanity what it most desperately needs in this day and age. Either way, let's all work together, atheist, Christian, Baha'i, and everyone else, to make the world a more loving, just, and better place. Thanks for listening. Hi.
Well, thank you. I will admit I had to watch that video several times to wrap my head around some of those concepts, especially at the beginning. But he presents them so interestingly. We really liked it. So now we have a short talk with a PowerPoint, and Kamran, I'll ask you to start that.
Some reason the PowerPoint stopped. It was there. It
You'll get it.
was already there. For some reason, it just disappeared on me. Okay, once again,
Yay. All right. That's wonderful. So this slide just shows you some of the concepts and some of the beautiful faces of people around the world for the Baha'i Faith, and just people. So go to the next slide. All right. So to go over some of those concepts that the video went through pretty quickly, things to remember about the Baha'i Faith is that the Baha'i Faith is one of the world's youngest major religions, and it teaches unity of God, of humanity, and of all religions. It has around 6 million followers in over 200 countries and principalities. The densest population of Baha'is are found in Iran, India, areas of Africa, North and South America. But you can find Baha'is in literally every country around the world. Next slide. So how did this faith begin? To review, it started in 19th century Persia or Iran. The Bab, which that word means the gate. So the Bab declared in 1844 that he was a prophet and he was proclaiming the coming of a new messenger of God. In 1863, the declaration of Baha'u'llah as the fulfillment of this prophecy was made, and Baha'u'llah means glory of God. Next slide. Progressive revelation is a key principle in the Baha'i Faith. We believe revelation from God is ongoing, that God has communicated with each culture. Remember that divine physician throughout the ages and brought prophets that were right for each time period and part of that world. So we look at the 9 manifestations of God as Abraham, Krishna, Moses, Zoroaster, the Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, the Bab, and Baha'u'llah. And we know that there's more to come. We believe more will come as humanity continues to mature. We're not expecting this to happen for about 1,000 years. but we don't know that yet. We don't know when that will be exactly. We haven't been told. Each religion is unique for its time and place, but they're all one. Each is a continuation and an advancement building on the one before. Next slide. So what did Baha'u'llah teach? A new revelation for that global society of all humanity being under one God. A quote that he wrote is, "The earth is one country and mankind its citizens." We believe spiritual teachings of all religions are universal and eternal. Social teachings must be updated as humanity matures. Next slide. And Kent Alkire is going to continue on the next part of this talk. So take it away, Kent. Kent, you're on mute.
All right, sorry about that. As Rain talked about in the film, with each revelation of God from the time man began to keep records of himself until now, messengers have come with teachings that are relevant to the time in which he lived. Baha'u'llah brought issues of racial unity at a time when slavery was still practiced and lawful. The idea of world peace at a time when there weren't airplanes, the internet, communications, the idea that gender equality, when women were treated no better than property, Baha'u'llah talked about, and actually one of the prominent figures in the Baha'i Faith was a woman who championed for equal rights. And the idea of science and religion, for a long time, there was always a conflict, appeared to be, between those who were practicing science and reason and those who practice faith. And Baha'u'llah said that science and religion are like the wings of a single bird. Each one is necessary and balances out the other. And as Rain talked about, the need for a spiritual solution to economic problems and to look at ways to make the world better for everyone. And then family values, which have been practiced in all the major religions, are continued in the Baha'i Faith. Next slide. The early leadership of the Baha'i Faith, as was talked about in the film, and Phyllis mentioned it, is Baha'u'llah basically was the authoritative person for the Baha'i Faith. And so that it would not divide into sects or become misunderstood, that in his will and testament, he named his son Abdul Baha, which Baha'is look at as a perfect example of what a human being's life can be like. He was knighted by the British for his contributions. He was an exceptional individual who traveled the world teaching the Baha'i Faith. And he also was the interpreter of Baha'u'llah's writings when there was need for clarity. And when he passed, his grandson, Shoghi Effendi, became the individual who developed kind of the structure of the Baha'i Faith and was the interpreter. And in his passing, the Universal House of Justice, which we'll discuss next slide, please. Yeah, that the Universal House of Justice basically became the leader of the Baha'i Faith in terms of being able to maintain order and lay out the progressive development of the Baha'i Faith. Baha'u'llah in his lifetime was a prisoner, and because of his beliefs stood at odds with the culture in which he lived. And during that time, he wrote many books that dealt with the spiritual and practical nature of man, not only for this time, but for the next 1,000 years, as Phyllis said earlier. And next slide. So the organization structure, as I mentioned before, the Universal House of Justice took over, and there are 9 members elected by all the Baha'is of the world, world leaders, and they exist in Haifa, Israel. And if you ever visit the Baha'i temples in Haifa, part of the structures there are house the Universal House of Justice. And on a national level, there are national assemblies that organize the affairs and the practical aspects of the Baha'i Faith. And then on the local level, there are spiritual assemblies also elected by the members of the community. And all three of us on this panel are members of the local spiritual assembly. Next slide, please. And next is going to be Kamran, is going to continue the conversation.
Thank you. In the Baha'i Faith, we have many sacred places. The foremost are the Shrine of Bab in Haifa, Israel, the Shrine of Baha'u'llah in Akka, Israel, and there's a Shrine of Abdul Baha in the making, in the progress, also in Israel. Baha'is have temples all around the world. There are 10 temples shown here on this slide, and then there's the 11th one is on the way being built. Baha'i calendar is consisted of 19 months of 19 days each, that totals to 361 days, plus 4 or 5 intercalary days, where depending on the leap year, it becomes the 5 days. And those are the days that charities are done, and not that charities just only done during those 5 days, but Baha'is do that throughout the year. But those specific days are set for that purpose. And then after those days are lapsed, gone, then the last month of the Baha'i calendar is a fasting month, which starts from March 2nd to March 20, again, 19 days. And during which days from the sun up to sundown, Baha'is abstain from drinking and eating and concentrate on work and prayer. And then at the end of the fasting month is a New Year celebration, which is called Nowruz, meaning new day in Farsi, which begins on March 21st, and it coincides with the spring equinox. On those days, Baha'is celebrate the end of the year and beginning of the new year. And there are 9 annual holy days in Baha'i Faith, which the next slide will show. On these 9 specifically holy days, Baha'is observe the days with abstaining from work and concentrating on community matters and gathering and observances of prayer and fellowship. Practices. As it was mentioned, both during the video and explained earlier slides, in Baha'i Faith, we have no churches, no clergies. Members of the local spiritual assembly and National Assembly are 9 members elected by the Baha'is annually. And then the Universal House of Justice, also 9 members from the Baha'is within the whole world, and elected by everyone, that eventually comes to that. And they serve 5 years. We have feast days, we have deepening days, and firesides. Use of consultation is very emphasized and very important matter in Baha'i Faith. In Baha'i Faith, we believe and we are told that once we have an idea and present it, it's no longer ours. It's provided for everyone's consultation, discussion, and for us presenting an idea and then trying to argue and emphasize and push it forward is discouraged, because we are told that it leads to disharmony and no truth would be found because of it. So stubbornness on trying to push our ideas is discouraged. And these are the resources, few websites that you can reach and find, ask, investigate more about Baha'i Faith and the structure of it, and everything that you are curious about the Baha'i Faith. And with this, this is the last slide in our presentation. We'll just turn it back to our moderator, Rabbi Michelle, and ready for Q&As, questions and answers.
Good. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. And the film clip was really interesting and makes me want to research more. So I thank you to the three of you for presenting, and also, like I said, being so devoted to our Simi Valley Interfaith group. So I know we only have a few people that are with us, but we have one question in the Q&A. So if other people have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. So we have a question from John, who asked, who was the divine physician prior to the Baha'u'llah?
Who wants to answer that? Would have been Muhammad. Before Baha'u'llah, it was the Bab, the Mirza Muhammad Ali of Shirazi, that was in his own right a prophet, messenger of God. And before him was Muhammad.
So does that mean it follows like the 9 that you mentioned, the 9 spiritual?
Yes.
That's correct. All of the we believe that all of the major religions, and there are actually some minor religions, like in America, that they had teachers that were relevant for the time in which they lived. So the divine physicians are many, as outlined. The major ones that have had international influence are the 9 that were mentioned by Rain and by Phyllis.
As I learn more about Native American faith, I realize that there are principles that just dovetail right with the Baha'i faith. And I have more and more respect for the Native religions and their worldview. It's very nice.
Good. So if we have more questions from our participants, feel free and put it in the Q&A. If not, I have a whole list of questions that I prepared.
Please.
So I'll ask you my questions. Some are just simple, like what language do you use for prayer? So is there a specific language? Like I know I always joke, God can speak any language you can speak, from your heart, but is there, since the origins were in Persia and Iran, so is there something holy about saying it in Farsi or in Arabic, or is it whatever religion because it's international?
Actually, Baha'u'llah wrote prayers in both Farsi and Arabic. Mm-hmm. Arabic being the second language of the time in Iran. But since then, prayers are translated throughout the world in so many languages. And so, for instance, in Germany, during the meetings, the 19-day feast nights, the prayers are in German language. And all the conversations, everything is in their language. In France is French. In Pakistan is Urdu. And, in India, it's Hindi. So it all, yeah. So there's no specificity to us, but we revere the both Farsi and Arabic chanting specifically, especially because it has certain feel to it when the prayers are chanted out.
Okay.
But most people
ahead.
pray in their native language. So if that's the question, yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then maybe that ties in, like if it's seen as maybe holier in some way to pray in either Arabic or Farsi, or is there something like a special role for children, or how do the kids participate? Besides, I know family gatherings and community, but is there?
Phyllis, want to pick that up?
So there are children's classes, and the younger ages center on learning virtues, especially through the stories of Abdul Baha, because that was the son of Baha'u'llah, and he was such a fantastic person. We just have all these stories about how he brought the beliefs of the Baha'i faith to life and how he practiced them. He walked the talk. But after that, we do have different children's classes that go up in difficulty as far as the material goes. Once a child is of the age of about 15, then they are what we call it, well, from about 12 to 15, they're a junior youth. And they start they're learning about the faith, but they're doing a lot of service. At 15, that's the age that a Baha'i child or youth can declare their faith. We don't baptize. It is really the independent investigation of truth. This person needs to choose this as this is in their heart, and then it goes on from there. So there's a lot of different things. And I think I see maybe Q&A.
Yeah, so there's a few. Maybe answer this one, because the film talked about, that there's more than just this physical life. So yeah, the question is, what are the beliefs of the afterlife, and what about the beliefs of the souls or the spirits of animals? So that's a great question.
So we definitely believe in the afterlife. We think that our life on earth now is to prepare for our soul's existence in what's to come. This is why we're here, and it's to do good things and to just keeping a better and better person, so that when we like Rain said, we lose the lease on our meat suit. My kids love that. That our soul continues. So we definitely believe in an afterlife. I don't believe Baha'i Faith believes that animals have souls, but gosh darn, they're awfully special to us.
I remember a story of Abdul Baha. He was asked about life after death, and he was trying to explain the fact that as different as the womb was for the child as compared to this world, the next world is as different from the next world is as different than it is in this world. And somebody had asked him, he says, that they were concerned that their animal, who they love very much, wouldn't be there. And Abdul Baha says, if you need that animal to be happy in the next world, that animal will be there.
The question of the soul is an interesting thing. If we consider soul as consciousness, ability to understand and analyze and think about some solutions of whatever is being dealt. Definitely, animals do feel pain, just like us, but they do not have the consciousness. They do not do, for instance, solve complex mathematical equations and such. But human beings are given that capacity, that capability. So if the soul that animates us is considered tied up with the consciousness, that's where the difference lies. But as Kent mentioned, which I remembered, yes, that was one of the concerns of early Baha'is, asking about their pets. And Abdul Baha had told them that if you love your dog so much in the afterlife, it'll be with you. So,
Good boy.
I heard the parrot. I heard the parrot parroting that answer.
Yeah, that's right.
He's not forfeiting that answer. He's going to stay with you. So another question is, because the film talked about atheists, but what about polytheistic faiths? How does the Baha'i faith look upon polytheistic faiths?
Well, we believe that there's one God, and that often I know in some cultures, different aspects of God are worshipped separately in kind of in the strength and the longevity of the mountain, or in something in nature. You know, I remember when I was investigating the truth of the faith, that somebody said there are many doors to truth, and behind each door there's a certain amount of truth, but only behind the door of God is there total truth. And I think that a lot of times, you know, we do believe that the animating force for the existence of humanity, the universe, is one God. We don't believe that there are multiple gods. But the fact is there certainly are qualities and aspects of God that are, you know, there is a feminine side to God's existence. There's a masculine side, but yet it's still all one God. It's a fundamental principle in the Baha'i faith.
So I have, are people joining the Baha'i faith? And what are some of the challenges that the community faces besides persecution in Iran? But I know that's been ongoing, but I mean, let's say just modernity or, you know, assimilation, or I don't know. So that's kind of two sides of the same question, if you will.
Right.
So the Baha'i faith is really growing. I believe, I won't say we're number one, but we're in the top 3 as far as spread of a faith across the world. And this PowerPoint, I will admit, I borrowed it and I had to update it because that slide said that there were only 7 temples. And matter of fact, we have 10 with the number 11 coming in Kenya. So we're definitely growing. Another thing that shows our growth is on one of those slides, I realized as it was read, it said that we don't have churches, but we do have Baha'i centers, especially in the larger cities. There's a Baha'i center in LA, there's a Baha'i center in Encino. Kamran's sister sits on the LSA of Sydney, which is so big, it has had to subdivide into smaller, more manageable units. It's just so huge. So yes, we're growing. Yep.
And how did the 2 main centers come to be built in Israel? That's kind of interesting.
Well, there's a prophetic part of that the Baha'i faith, we believe, if you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddhist, that you will find in the teachings, we believe, that there is reference to the return and the unification of religion on earth. And Israel played a pivotal point in all the Islamic religions as to being the place that God would return. So it wasn't an accident. Even though Baha'u'llah was born in Iran, he was basically driven out from country to country and ended up in Israel. And we don't feel that was an accident. That was divine providence.
So Baha'u'llah was imprisoned in Akka. And he basically spent 40 years of his life being moved from place to place. And each place he moved, if he was imprisoned, he ended up making so many friends and believers that it would annoy the governors because it wasn't working what they were doing. They thought they would isolate him and he pops back up. So he actually spent so many years in Akka, which was a horrible prison. They said if a bird flies over Akka, it'll die. It was just awful. And he actually passed away there in Haifa. So that's a big reason why the center of the Baha'i faith is right there. And as Kent said, it's Israel, that area is just such a pivotal place for so many faiths. It's not by accident.
That's right.
There's a certain mysticism why there's Judaism has a center in Israel, Christianity has, and there are various mosques actually in there too. So it's just something I find very mystical. Just happens to be.
Center of the spiritual universe.
Yeah.
So I have maybe one last question. We have a couple minutes. So we have so many, modern changes and social changes. And so how does the community feel about, accepting the LGBTQ community? I know it's more personal because there's no clergy person it's more of individuals, but has there been any, like, having to go through changes like the rest of society, kind of being more open and accepting, and some are and some aren't, but most of the more liberal religions are, if you will. So how does the community, accept or welcome LGBTQ people?
In the Baha'i Faith, everyone is welcome, everyone is loved, because the premise of the faith is unity of mankind. So any kind, but in order to enter into the faith, and I guess the distinction would be in come to the procreation, and the procreation physically is only possible with male and female. However, we welcome everyone, and we encourage them to kind of deepen in the faith and find their way. But everyone is welcome, everyone is loved.
So a Baha'i in the United States is just the same as a Baha'i in Russia, in Japan, in Greece. So we don't have any more strict or more liberal. We are the same everywhere. And I will tell you that we're very loving with people, but at this time, with the teachings that we have, it's pretty concrete, the views of the LGBTQ. That being said, could somebody be one of the friends of the Baha'i Faith and love some of the bigger concepts, and we're going to welcome them into things? Yes. But would they be able to be a member of the faith as, the card-carrying Baha'i? No. So, but we also believe in the harmony of science and religion. So we don't know what the next 1,000 years will bring. But for right now, it's a really hard answer, Rabbi Michelle, because we have a very close family member who is transgender female. So we still love her. and she's a good person. So that's what we go with.
Yeah, every single person, we believe as Baha'is, have a personal connection, a relationship with God. That is for everyone. It doesn't matter what their choices are, or what they believe. That we believe that God is connected directly with all of us, whether we're aware of it or not aware of it. Then there's a relationship between the community, the Baha'i community. That is part of the Baha'i faith, but it is the most important part is the fact that the teachings of God have come for every individual, and they're available for every person to study and to gain insight into why we're here and what life's about.
Wonderful. I didn't mean to put you on the hot spot. I just think
Good question.
It's a question that's difficult sometimes to deal with.
Well, we have new kind of social understanding, and as our Western society have come a long way in terms of understanding people's biology. So and the religions are challenged by, we have different rules from older times and different ways people saw things, and how do we understand things today? So I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable in any way. Just
you did not. It's we're here to answer those tough questions too.
Right.
Absolutely.
But I've been asked before.
Right.
And so it's a tough question. But it's a good question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's 8 o'clock. I don't know if in our Q&A people, anybody have more questions or comments, and I want to thank you, each of you, for sharing and being so enthusiastic and so knowledgeable and so positive and helpful and inspiring, you know, for us to learn more and to feel connected to one another and you know, to highlight that task of us all working together to make the world a better place and to be kind to one another. And as you said, one humanity, it made me think of in the Genesis story that we're created in the image of God, whatever that means, but I understand it to mean everybody has something special about them.
Yes.
Right. I believe that too.
Just to be funny, because my dad wasn't always like the big animal person, but when he would come to my house, I always told him that my dog had a soul. So whether he wanted to believe it or not, I wasn't debating it with him that my doggy had a soul. But we have one more comment.
One thing maybe I should kind of clear in the Baha'i Faith, even though we teach the teachings of Baha'u'llah and spread the knowledge of the faith, there's no pressure. We're not trying to convert anybody. It's just that Baha'i Faith is for the whole world in terms of if you need to unify everyone, you find the ways to accept them and communicate. So anyone with their own religion, as long as they are understanding and getting along, and that's why the interfaith, for instance, is, you know, the golden rule concept. That the basic premise is being able to know each other and get along and live as a family. You know, in a family, you don't have every member as mom or every member as dad or every, so that if that would be translated into beliefs. So the whole world is consisted of many beliefs that when they come together as a family, they're accepted and they're loved, they coexist and cooperate. So that's what the Baha'i Faith is all about.
You said there was one more question?
No, it was a thank you, but I'll say amen to that. So
Well, we also want to point out that the Rabbi is going to be the featured speaker on next month's,
Hey.
Yes.
which is going to be June 24th at
Yes.
7 p.m. And for anybody who has questions about her faith and the Jewish religion, she's the person to speak. So
yes,
thank you very much.
I will give you the highlights. Yeah,
Yeah, there we go.
thank you for being our local resources and also dear friends.
Yeah,
And
that's
to
true.
each of you who are on. So I know Wendy and John are here. So thank you for being also faithful supporters.
Yeah,
And,
thank you.
and yeah, maybe we all walk this path together and strengthen one another and learn from each other and challenge each other and be together, you know, through all these crazy times to give support to one another.
I love it in this last crazy year of COVID. You didn't see me as much, but every time we get together, it's like, this is my village. This is my family getting back together. So
Yeah.
I look forward to, maybe we'll do that unity walk in the fall and it'll be good.
It'll be nice.
It'll be
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Wonderful.
All
Well,
right.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank
to
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the
Bye-bye.
opportunity.
Thank you
Night.
for those who watched. Thank you.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Mackenzie. Mackenzie is our tech hero.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Bye-bye.
Okay. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.